Hi, boys and girls. Today's story is Rocket Writes a Story by Tad Hillis. Now, if you remember from the very beginning of kindergarten, we read Rocket Learns to Read, and it was about him learning the sounds that the letters make. Well, friends, you are letter experts right now. You are reading like the wind. You know the sounds that those letters make. And now we're going to read Rocket Writes a Story because I would like you to try to write some stories this summer. That's the best thing you can do to use those skills that you have in order to keep them and be ready for when first grade begins. So listen to the story of how he learns how to write a story and keeps adding more and more detail to it. Okay, there's his bush with words all over it. Remember his little friend the birdie? Remember how he had to fly away when it became winter time? Ooh, I try to block off that light up there. Rocket loved books. He loved to read them to himself or to sit quietly by his teacher, the little yellow bird, as she read them out loud. Rocket even liked the way books smelled. When he opened a new book, it smelled like a place he'd never been to, like a friend he had never met. The little yellow bird agreed. Books are inspiring. They make me sing. Well, Rocket, he loved words too. After snack time, his teacher would say, "Rocket, why don't you use that nose of yours to sniff out some new words?" And off he'd go. He'd fetch some nice ones like buttercup and bug and feather and nest. "I'm looking for words," Rocket would announce to anybody who would listen. Rocket always brought his words back to the classroom and wrote them down. The little yellow bird would help him spell the tricky ones, and then they'd hang them on their word tree. Sometimes the bird added her own words to the collection. "This one is small, but I promise it'll come in handy." And the word is UP, up. Wow, look at that big word tree. "Magnificent!" chirped the little yellow bird once their tree was covered. "Now what should we do with all these splendid words?" Rocket thought all afternoon, and then he had an idea. Rocket left school with a very waggy tail. "I'm going to write a story," he declared to Fred and Emma. "My story will be an adventure about the great wide world," he told the butterfly. "I will use many words," he explained to Mr. Barker. "Hello, up there," he called as he passed the tree where he had found the word nest. "I'm going to write a story." Well, the next day, Rocket returned to his classroom, and it was time to begin. He looked down at the blank page, and the blank page looked up at him, but no story would come. At snack time, Rocket gave up. "I don't know what to write," he told his teacher. "Don't worry," the little yellow bird chirped. "One of the hardest parts of writing is coming up with a good story. But if it's one of the most fun, too." That didn't make sense, boys and girls. I'm going to start over. "Don't worry," the little yellow bird replied. "One of the hardest parts of writing is coming up with a good story. But it's one of the most fun, too. Perhaps you want to write about something you've seen." A bug? Asked Rocket. Yes, sang his teacher. Stories need good characters. Or what about something that happened to you? Or something you really enjoy? My favorite stick, suggested Rocket. Of course, said the bird. Or you could write about something that inspires you. Inspires me? Asked Rocket. Yes, something that excites you, the little bird sang. So look at all of those words that they have. Maybe that's something that you want to do first, is brainstorm a whole bunch of words of things that you like or that inspire you or that you've seen or you want to do. Rocket took a walk and looked for inspiration. He thought about friends he knew and places he'd been. He stuck his nose high up in the air and sniffed the gentle breeze. And there it was, a delightful smell of pine needles and feathers. Inspiration! For the rest of the morning he thought about feathers and pine needles and feathers. That afternoon he started to write. In the evening, Rocket followed the beautiful smell, and he found himself at the tree with the nest. Hello again, he called into the branches. Is anyone home? He heard rustling from above, but no one answered. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I must tell you about the fact that you smell nice. Very inspiring. May I ask who you are? Still nothing. I'll come back at a more convenient time, he said, and he trotted off. So there's that nest up there. That's who he's using for inspiration. Oh, nighttime. That night, as Rocket watched the stars, he thought about feathers and a nest in a pine tree. He thought about his story and his collection of words. Oh, there's a good picture of who's in that nest. On his way to school the next day, Rocket was surprised by what he saw. A brand new word, he said, and it's already written down. It says, well, he tried to sound the word out. Owl. Owl, came from a quiet voice from the branches. It says, owl. That's me. Oh, thank you, Owl, Rocket called. I'm always looking for words, and this one's a beauty. Rocket ran all the way to his classroom. O-W-L, owl. Now, there's a word you don't hear every day, chirped the little yellow bird. Only 3 letters. But what a word! It was a present, explained Rocket, and he added the new word to his story. So stories don't have to be written in just one day. It can be ongoing. So there's his new friend, Owl. And here's what he says. I'm writing a story about you, Rocket announced proudly to the owl the next morning. The owl poked her head out of her nest, and for the first time, Rocket saw her friendly face. Her big round eyes blinked below feathery tufts. About me? She asked softly. Would you like to come down and hear it? Asked Rocket. Well, thank you, but I think I'll listen from my nest, the owl answered. So Rocket cleared his throat and began to read. Once there was an owl. She smelled like feathers and pine needles. She lived in a tree. The owl's eyes widened. Is there more? Well, there will be, said Rocket. Every day, Rocket worked on his story. He wrote words down and crossed words out. When things were going well, he wagged his tail. When he didn't know what to write next, he would growl. Sometimes he drew pictures for his story. Or he he would take a walk in the meadow and look for inspiration. Oh, all great ideas for when you're writing your story. The little yellow bird kept encouraging him. Remember, stories take time, she'd say. She wanted to know more about the owl and would ask Rocket questions. What do you think Owl does during the day? Why don't you think she would come down? What color is her beak? What does she do every day? Good questions. Well, Rocket, he wants to know more about the owl too. So he visited her tree often, and he would read her his story, which changed every day. And the owl was captivated. That meant she was very, very interested. And when Rocket stopped, she would always ask, well, then what would happen? And look at how close she is to his nose now. She kept coming down, down the tree. Well, at last came the day when Rocket knew he was finished. What a fine story, chirped the little yellow bird after she had read the entire story called My First Story by Rocket. Rocket ran to the owl's pine tree. It's done, he called. Come and listen. And so down and down and down came the owl till she was right beside Rocket. Then Rocket began to read. He read about an owl with friendly eyes and a beak the color of a buttercup. She lived in a nest high in a tree on the edge of a meadow and smelled like pine needles and feathers. She liked to nap in the daytime and listen to stories. Branch by branch, the owl came down from her nest. Rocket read. She was shy, but she was brave too. Suddenly Rocket stopped. He wrote something on his paper, then began to read again. One day the owl came all the way down to the ground, and we became friends. The owl blinked. Can there be one last sentence, she asked. Can you say? And the owl liked the story very much. Oh, what a perfect ending, said Rocket. And it was. And there's a better picture of their word tree. So friends, I would like you this summer to try writing some different stories. If you go to the park one day, try to write about what you do at the park. If you have a blow-up swimming pool or a real swimming pool at home, write a story about your pool. If you get to go to the store one day, write about the store. Even writing about distance learning would be a great story to write about, and then save that story. And when you become a mom or a dad, your kids won't believe what happened to you when you were in kindergarten. And you could write why we're doing distance learning. So remembering about COVID-19, lots and lots of things out in the world to inspire you, but have fun writing a story. If you get one started today, take a picture of it and send it to me in Seesaw. Otherwise, you could even take a picture of your book and email it to me this summer, and I would love to hear you read your story. Happy writing, friends!